So a person who doesn't believe someone should have colored hair and tattoos showing now is the person who decides that I can only get coffee from someone who looks like me. Otherwise, then I'm not going to. Like, you see where that's broken?
Yeah,
Like, you just don't, it doesn't make any sense that we are telling people that their voices matter, their uniqueness and who they are and their thoughts matter, but only if they look like the person who is the, I don't know, what's the profile of the person who buys coffee from them.
Hello and welcome back to Empower and Elevate podcast. Today we have an amazing guest. She's a woman with a vibrant personality and colorful hair. She's a top expert in customer relations, helping companies grow with new ideas. Not only a senior business development manager at a private company, but also a co-host of the Channel CRO podcast. Our guest has many skills and lots of wisdom to share with us today. So please welcome to the podcast, the bright, wonderful, and lively Desraie Thomas. Welcome, Desraie.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark. I'm very excited for the show.
Well, thanks for reaching out. I'm happy to have you here. I have so much to learn about you. And most recently learned that there was a podcast. I don't know how I didn't catch on to that, but so tell me a little bit about this podcast.
Yeah, it's kind of super interesting to me anyways. I think it's super fun, and it's fun, extra fun because it's a part of a bigger conversation. So I got laid off last June, and I got laid off actually this time last June, the day I was about to go on a 10-day vacation, I got laid off. I got a call from my boss and said, P.S., you don't have a job anymore. And I was like, oh, yay, what am I going to do next? Summer off 2023 will be amazing. It'll be fantastic. But then one of the very first things that I did once I got back from my vacation and digressed and tried to figure things out a little bit was I posted online because I knew that being in this industry is especially in roles like me, where I am very forefront in front of people, and I also get really busy, that I wanted to make sure that I was still staying valuable. And my face was still, I don't want people to forget about me. I didn't want to not be able to get a job if it took a while to get a job, even though I thought at the time it was going to be super easy to get a job. And so I posted online and said, does anyone have any projects for me? Anything I can do? I need to keep busy. I'm not a very slow person. I like to do a lot of different things. And I didn't want to fall too much into the depressive hole that happens sometimes when life changes are forced upon you.
Sure.
So summer off 2023, let's do new projects. It's going to be amazing. And Kathleen Martin, she reached out and said, I have an idea for a podcast. Would you like to do a podcast with me? And I was on board 100%, but warned her that I'm not the person to do the next steps. Like, if you're like, Des, you want to do a podcast with me and you don't have the next steps and you just leave, if you were like, Des, I need you to set it all up and you're in this, the editing, the setting it up, the website, all of that, it's so much work. And I'm like, just so you know, that's not my forte.
Okay.
And she, by the end of the day, had the website sent to me, my email address, the links, the editing. She had the entire project plan laid out.
Wow.
And we spent I started that at the end of August after ChannelCon, we started recording. So we're almost at a year now, which is really cool.
Awesome.
We recorded, I think, something like 50 episodes in September and October. It's the Channel CRO podcast, I should also say. It's the Channel CRO. And the way the thought processes was, like, who do we want to talk to? Who are the people controlling the purse strings of the industry? The chief revenue officers. And we kind of thought it just was be a project, but it's been a year. We've released episodes every week. They're about 20 minutes, 25 minutes long. We've interviewed CROs from across industries, mainly channel, but also outside of channel. And then we've also interviewed a lot of either the sales leadership or the marketing leadership. I mean, like, how do you guys communicate? How do you guys work together? Or then the people who are the more the business development side of it. They have to deal with another realm of it. And then we were just at PAX 8 Beyond, where we recorded over 11 hours of content at Beyond. Fantastic amount of work. It was exhausting and so phenomenal, where we focused on the community conversation. Let's interview community leaders and talk about how do you get your CFO to be okay with spending hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars going to conferences and events, and how do you track the ROI in that? And you would think that's an easy question, but it's not. A lot of people struggle because it's not about just, okay, we spent this much money and then we got this many leads and that's the end of it. It's about the community. It's about the partnerships. I was watching what you and Ken were talking about on the episode that you recorded earlier. And the same thing, it talks about the community. The community is so important. And so how do you track that community engagement when it comes to revenue? And it's a harder number to track. Eric Torres is one of the best tracking metrics on the board. But yeah. So it's been a lot of fun. We've excited for the next, coming out of the first year of it. Kathleen Martin our podcast got picked up by the JSG group. Super excited. It is, it's a lot of fun to be interviewing people who are way smarter than me and have really fun conversations.
No, that's fantastic. So you talk about, she approached you with this and you said, hey, I'm not the person for the additional steps. Obviously, I'm just the pretty face and the lively, right, brilliant person that you are, very colorful to say the least, right? So in your role so just what you're co-hosting, and is that where you kind of draw the line, or are you doing some of the post-production stuff as well? Or I guess no, not at all.
I'm just co-hosting. So Kathleen and I the way our brains work are very opposite.
Okay.
We're both ADHD is the thing. We're both distracted all the time and shiny things and get very excited. But she's marketing background and I'm sales background. And so it is very much along the lines of when we're doing these interviews, the way our brains work, we're able to interview the person, whoever we're interviewing, we come at them from different directions and we're able to pull information that is valuable to any of our listeners, because we're not just talking, like if Kathleen was just doing this on her own, her conversation is going to be more on the marketing part, but we're talking to CROs. Marketing isn't just it. We also need to talk about sales. And so that's kind of why I think that, she was so excited to bring me on board to the podcast with her, is just because our thought processes and how we approach the world are exactly the opposite.
Gotcha. Wonderful. And had you done anything like that prior?
No, not really. I've been on lots of podcasts and stuff. I worked at Datto for about 5 years on the business development team. And a big part of that, unfortunately, ended up in the middle of COVID. So I was at Datto for the entirety of COVID. So my role completely changed. Pre-COVID, yes, we did a lot of virtual stuff. We were on people's podcasts and stuff like that, but it was more of the side note of the job because we were traveling 70% of the time. But because of the shift in the way the world had to work together and the way marketing and the way interactions changed, all of a sudden podcasts, webinars, panels, all of those things became more apparent. And so I've done all of those things hundreds of times across the board, but this was my very first time of actually being involved in a full-fledged podcast. I'm always open and said I would do this. And there's been several different MSPs actually around the community who are like, Des, come join my podcast, or will you do a podcast with me? And I'm like, I'm on board. But everyone gets busy and things happen. It's just one of those things. But yeah.
Yeah. And so what have you found, I guess, most challenging about the podcast aspect? Especially you said you went on the road, or you went to PAX 8. You said all kinds of content was filmed there. I guess what kind of challenges are you facing, or have you faced doing that?
I would say probably the biggest challenge is when you're doing consistent weekly episodes and when we are recording at Beyond. So we recorded, I think, 18 sessions 18 different sessions, and we missed out. I think there was 5 sessions that just didn't end up happening.
Okay.
So you're recording sessions and you're planning to have them every week posted, and many episodes probably in between or back to back on top of each other. So the listener, what are they listening to? And whatever you're doing, you don't want them listening to you asking the same 5 questions over and over and over again to every single person, because what are they getting from it? So I would say the most, for me anyways, and Kathleen would clearly have a different experience because she does all the editing, would be trying to make sure that we are getting information from our the people that we're interviewing that is valuable to our end users or listeners, and or isn't repetitive in nature, and also recognizing although they do have different answers to different questions, and so trying to pull out from each person, well, what is the value in what you're going to offer in this question? And it can be difficult. Like if you've done podcast interviews, there's sometimes when you're interviewing someone and they're like, you ask them a question and their answer is yes. Okay, would you like to elaborate? And their elaboration is like 2 more sentences. And you're like, okay, so what I'm getting from what you're saying is, would you agree? All right, so I was looking online and I found this about you. Can you elaborate more about this thing? Or can you elaborate on your company? Or, oh, I want to dive deeper into that, and trying to find more information, because there's nothing worse than the yes.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. No, most definitely. I mean, it can be very, very challenging at times. And not just when you talk about doing a podcast, but just in general conversations with people in life, right? Those you run into, once again, you answer a question, a yes, no, it's like, okay, now what, right? Like it creates an awkward silence, or like, how are we going to continue this conversation? So, and that could be even with a sales prospect, right? Mm-hmm. Ask questions and you get very short answers, like, okay, it's very hard for me to help you if you're not going to talk to me. So
I've been doing a lot of cold calling and following up after Beyond, as I do my job. Super excited about it. But the Beyond follow-up, when you're doing like your calls and you get a lot of voicemails, and then all of a sudden you're like, you realize your voicemails, you're like, hi, damn it. Wait, voicemail. Oh, no. Duh. Quick, they probably weren't going to listen to that anyways, so it's fine. It's fine. Or you get the one someone actually answers and you're like, oh, hi, I'm Desraie. I'm at Estendio. How are you doing today? What am I selling? What am I doing? Wait, I just totally forgot, got distracted. It's just been so many voicemails and you're like out of your head for a second.
So, obviously I mentioned you're a very colorful person, and you can't help but notice, obviously, very bright, colorful hair. And most recently, I believe social media, there was a picture of you holding up I believe it was a Nike tennis shoe that matched the hair color, right? And I was like, well, check that out. Yeah, that's so awesome. So
I also got Mario Nikes.
Oh my goodness.
I'm not even kidding you. They're amazing. I'm so excited to wear them.
Very cool. So tell me a little bit about, you're a very colorful person. You have a very bright personality. Is this something, I guess, from childhood, you've always been this individual? Is this something that you've adapted with time, life experiences? Help me understand Desraie as a person when it comes to your personality.
Well, that's a great question. Caffeine. I think I've always been me. There's that. I've always been a pretty loud, obnoxious, I don't know if obnoxious is the right word anymore, but like loud individual.
Okay.
I used to, in my early 20s or whatever, I would wear a lot of really bright clothes and said that I just want to be a highlighter. Like that is I can be a highlighter. But it was before you could have colorful hair. When I put a little bit of red in my hair, I remember working for a restaurant and them being like, careful.
Right.
You're pushing the boundaries here. And I'm like, I'm going to push the boundaries. They're like casual Friday. I'm like, I'm in sweatpants. So not that casual. I'm the boundary pusher of I just want to dress how I want to dress. And that's just however it is. But there came an entire point. So I live in Calgary, Alberta.
Okay.
I don't know if do you know anything about Calgary?
I'm going to say very, very little. I'm planning a little. I will be visiting in September for my first time.
In September, are you coming to Calgary, or are you going to Kelowna for CanadaCon?
I'm flying into Calgary, right? And then making our way to Banff.
Oh, Banff is beautiful. Okay. There's a Canadian event called CanadaCon in Kelowna in September that is going to be really, really good. So depending on how long you're coming up for, if you wanted to do that, that's one of the most beautiful drives. It's one of my favorite drives. And one of the more beautiful drives from Calgary to Kelowna. But anyways, that's neither here or there.
Yeah.
And Banff is absolutely gorgeous. So you will absolutely love that, as it's phenomenal as well. So Calgary, Alberta, I grew up in where everyone around me has been oil and gas, pretty much. That's Alberta is. It's very much an oil and gas province. And so I would watch from the age of 18 onwards. I'd work and I'd have like big groups of friends, and they'd all be, I don't know if this is appropriate anymore. They call them rig pigs. They're all rig pigs, and they work like 1 month on, 1 month off, or 2 weeks on, or insert whatever. And then about every like 3 years, you watch them all get laid off, or you watch spring breakup where they're getting laid off for spring breakup because they can't work. And then you have that throughout the entire industry. So those are just the people who are in the field, but you go through oil and gas, and those jobs kind of the layoffs when they happen, they will go all the way to the offices. So pre-COVID, we were still, I think it was like 40% capacity our downtown core was at in the business sections. Okay. So like, it's because no one gets work. I watched before COVID, my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, they both got laid off because they're both in oil, or they weren't necessarily in oil and gas, but they were functioning in that industry where the economy crashed. It crashes all the way down. And so I thought that I was going to end up in oil and gas because I'm like, that makes sense. And there was moments in my life that I tried to conform to be that person, because that is like the same kind of people who work. Like when you're in the office building, you're doing sales in oil and gas, you are should be male. You should not be female, because I don't take you seriously because you know nothing about this. But then also if you're female, or male, you need to be suited up. You need to be dressed to the nines. You need to dress professionally. You need to speak professionally, and you need to fit into the boys club at the same time. So be professional, but not too professional. You also need to be okay with the behaviors that are coming at you. And it didn't really fit me. And I probably could have done it. And there's been many, many times in my life that I've tried to conform. But when I got into the channel and I got the opportunity, I first started working at Passportal under Colin Knox and Dan Wensley. And the very first show that I ever went to, I only had one small tattoo. It was on the front of my foot. And I was on stage presenting. And the presentation was horrible, by the way. It was like the worst presentation anyone's ever watched. But it was epic. That's a whole other story. It was amazing. I learned a lot. It was fantastic. But anyways, when I came off stage, I had an MSP came up to me right away. And he's like, just so you know, you can't be showing your tattoos on stage. No one will take you seriously. And that was the top of my foot. And like I was wearing long sleeves. Huh. And then I was like, wait, what is this industry? I can't even show, no one's going to take me, what? And then with Dan Wensley, and I was really lucky working for that team. And then my community around me started growing. Mm-hmm. And I started putting a little bit of color in my hair. And then people started commenting. And as my community around me grew, I started getting the feedback that it didn't matter. I didn't have to be somebody else and to look a different way in order to be respected. And that's like a really big thing, I think, especially for I'm going to say younger people, but younger females, definitely. I even worried, people call me Des all the time. And I worried about people calling me Des because it was a nickname. And a nickname is something that people don't take you seriously about. And I would get told that if you can't just be cute and pretty and people are going to take you seriously. You can't be bubbly and people are going to take you seriously. You can't look like that and people are going to take you seriously. So you got all these rules that you have to conform into this certain way in order for people to take you seriously. I'm doing the longest winded answer ever.
No, continue.
Thank you. But I was really lucky because of this community I built around me. And then with Dan Wensley being my boss at the time, he was like, I don't care what you look like, do whatever you want. And slowly I started doing things that made me feel comfortable, like coloring my hair brightly because I like it. It makes me feel good and it makes me happy. I don't like when my hair is the regular color. It's just the way I am as a person. I love tattoos. And so I just have naturally been getting more and more tattoos just because I do. But there was a difference between when I first started and had tattoos, but I had to cover and make sure you're covered pants now. And my boss, there was an event actually I did with Eric Torres where it was at a golf. We were doing a golf hole, like standing at the golf hole, handing out drinks. Yeah, that kind of thing. And so you have to wear golf gear. And I'm like, Eric, is it okay if I wear shorts because of my tattoos? And he's like, yeah, Des, you can wear whatever, like Like wear the normal, what you're supposed to wear, golf wear. But yeah, you can wear shorts. But there's been many, up until starting at that job, there's been a dozen, 2, 3 dozen people, more than that, my entire life who said, if you do not look like this, you will not be accepted. You will not be successful. And then just to close this up, the last little thing, because I think it's an interesting part of the conversation. We just did a panel with Kathleen Martin and a bunch of really strong women on the Advancing Leadership Network. Mm-hmm. And the panel was all about, are you like breaking these boundaries? And there's a whole more about it, but are you the person who is going to conform to get to the top so you can open the doors for below you? Or are you going to be the person who's going to smash through the doors, but then might never get that promotion? Because the people that are hiring, they still want you to look like that. So that is a conversation to constantly be having. And I think I'm just the person who wants to smash the doors. And if it ends up being that I don't end up working for a company, or I don't work for a person who doesn't support the way I look, and or doesn't see the value in what I have to say, what my thoughts are, those kind of things, because of the way I look, then I probably don't want to work there anyways.
Right. Well, and thank you for answering that. And that seems like being very honest and open about it. So, it's a couple things here. You're talking about oil and gas and conforming and all that being a female, right? And all these challenges, right? Being faced with. You're talking about an industry that male driven or typically male, they act a certain way, certain role, look a certain way. You talk about your self-expression and how it makes you feel, right? Mm-hmm. By not conforming. And hey, I like my hair bright. Makes you feel good. I mean, who doesn't like to feel good about themselves, right? You mentioned the tattoos. All things that I think as society, we've always looked negative at, right? On a lot of different things, aspects. We could talk about piercings, we could talk about hair color, we could talk about tattoos. But more and more, I think we were seeing how much more common these things are, more acceptable we were of these things. Mm-hmm. Maybe less stereotyping going on, right? As a society, as we're becoming more accepting of things. And who doesn't, you're talking about the small tattoo on the foot or on the ankle or this. And obviously I can see clearly, right? You've got pretty much a good sleeve going on, it looks like, from here, right? Mm-hmm. Have you noticed, even once again, you can say, hey, I'm Desraie, this is me, accept it or don't, that's on them. Do you feel that as a society, and you've noticed in society, probably the past 5 to 10 years, how that shift has been taking place? That it's not just Desraie, but a lot more self-expression and accepting of that.
It is. It has shifted quite a bit, but it's still nowhere close to where it needs to be. And I start that with actually looking. When I start, this is my fiddle toy, by the way, anyways, I realize I'm holding my little Lego fidget toy. Okay, so I start that conversation, it is changing. We can see it, especially in our industry. You see a lot more people covered in tattoos. I don't go to events and I'm the only person covered in tattoos anymore. I don't go to events and be the only person with my hair colored brightly. There are people, but the way I say that it's not shifting as quickly as it needs to be, I'm going to go back to your minimum wage, like McDonald's, your Starbucks. Even though I love my hair color, one of the more and like tattoos and great, and for me, yes, I love it because it does good for me, but it's also a lot to do with the fact that I often will be at McDonald's I'm not that often at McDonald's, but enough. Or Starbucks, you're at the lobby hotel and you're going to Starbucks, and I'll get these young people who'll stop me and be like, oh my God, I love your hair. I want my hair, but I'm not allowed. So we're saying to these people that they are not allowed to work at Starbucks and have their hair brightly colored because the coffee isn't going to be as good, because the customer service isn't going to be as good. That doesn't make sense either, because a person is a person. You're hiring a person, not hopefully you're not hiring someone who's cranky and hates life to do customer service, their hair color shouldn't matter. So then the what is it? The perception of the people. So a person who doesn't believe someone should have colored hair and tattoos showing now is the person who decides that I can only get coffee from someone who looks like me. Otherwise, then I'm not going to. Like, you see where that's broken?
Yeah,
like, you just don't, it doesn't make any sense that we are telling people that their voices matter, their uniqueness and who they are and their thoughts matter, but only if they look like the person who is I don't know, what's the profile of the person who buys coffee from them. So McDonald's, you're not allowed to look unique to work at McDonald's because the people who eat McDonald's are going to judge you, not like
the food quality or the service.
Yeah, like the customer service is going to be worse. Yeah. But if you have pink hair, it's what? Or blue hair or facial piercings or however you want to look. Like, I do understand that there's a pendulum, and there of course is. I'm the person who would have pendulum it and would have shown, like I said, shown up at work in sweatpants. Like, I get it. I do understand it. But when there's boundaries to be pushed and I don't even have anything, I'm going to push against it. But when you start there and you realize that it isn't like the first jobs, the jobs that people start in, they're told that society will not respect them and they are not allowed to look a certain way. And because society will only see value and want to work in customer service with them if they look like the rest of society, it just seems broken to me.
Yeah, sure. No, it sounds broken to me as we talk about it. And we think about things that I know that we have these corporate standards, right? And we want to have this image and it be portrayed in a certain way, or you're appealing to the masses, right? And I'm just going to say masses because I'm sure as a percentage, there's more people with your typical blonde, black, brown, whatever hair than bright pink hair, right? So, I mean, they appeal to the masses and know that, but then we're excluding those others, right? And yes, at what point is it corporate standard versus being, hey, it's not going to impact our service. It doesn't change how that burger tastes or how it's made, and get rid of some of that stigma that we have behind people looking maybe different, what we considered the norm, right? What they considered normal. Look at tattoos. I see it as a big thing, right? It used to be, hey, they had to be covered. You can't see them. You didn't wear long sleeves. Nothing. You can't have that at all. And then we said, your industrial events are more and more different industries. You see it more than more. Every day it's like it becomes more of the norm. And I'm probably the abnorm anymore. It feels like because I don't have anything, right? I'm plain vanilla.
Yeah. Like, we're talking about this problem in like really small, like we're talking about this is still me being like, I'm talking about pink hair and tattoos.
Yeah.
But the problem is so drastically bigger. And I'm just even talking about my experience. And this is like the general, there's conversations that I've had where this is a lovely woman of color who was told that she couldn't wear braids because people wouldn't take her seriously and people felt intimidated by her. And so like the conversation that you have to you have to fit in a box to be successful. You have to fit in a box. You have to look like everybody else. Those boxes can be very small depending on where you are, and they can change quite drastically. So you're saying to a person who might live in an area who they are the only colored person, and now they have to look like everybody else to be successful. Like, it's such a bigger problem when we bring in, like, many cultures. Like, there's many cultures out there that don't look the same. And so I'm only talking from my experiences, but it's such a big conversation to me because I am not the only person who looks different than everybody else. There is many, many people who aren't fit in a box of what society has decided is the okay thing to look like in order to be successful. And until we have these conversations and there's so many more conversations to it, But until we start looking at people and being like, the way you look has nothing to do with your ability to be successful, your ability to work in customer service, your ability to present yourself, the ability for you to be able to speak, to use your brain and to be valuable to other businesses or society in general. Mm-hmm. I just don't see how we can even get to the next point to talk about, well, we talk about the diversity and inclusion conversation. Mm-hmm. Well, what does that look like? Inclusion. Well, if nobody ever has to look a certain way, aren't we getting one step closer to that? And that their value is based on their thoughts and what they have to say. And we stop telling people, like, there's even conversations where people are told in the C-suite that if you don't have the expensive purse in the C-suite, you are not accepted by your peers. If you get to a certain level and you're driving a crappy car, you're not accepted. Like, we put so many boundaries on you're not accepted based on things that are just dumb.
Yeah, dumb, for sure. For sure. And I think back, and I'm just going to think back, and I know this is before my time, but I look back to this is back in the 50s and 60s. Mm-hmm. Okay. And you talk about being in business and careers, where even you talk about business attire, what was considered normal to go to work in, right? Yep. Pants, mm-hmm. and dress pants, dress shoes, shirt, tie, jacket. I mean, that was normal everyday garb, right? Like that was just what was socially accepted, is that's how you dress. And I know that's shifted obviously over the decades and there's the generations and I think the same thing as we see we talk about the appearance, right? The hair, mm-hmm. the tattoos, piercings, those things. Obviously no way that would, even long hair. So let's talk about long hair back and, it's unacceptable for a dude to have long hair. Obviously today it's widely more acceptable, right?
Mm-hmm. So it is shifting. It's right? Not right. I'm so excited to see what happens in like 10, 15, 20 years from now. Like I'm excited for this younger generation who is saying no to a lot of things. And they are saying that it's not worth me changing my entire life to work for minimum wage at a company. Mm-hmm. I'm going to try to figure out a way to make money or to support myself, or I'm going to spend my entire life living at this like lower level because I'm not going to change to try to fit the norms of whatever company has decided that I need to be successful.
Yeah. No, I love it. And I love the fact that obviously that you're willing to push those boundaries and not willing to, hey, you are you. This is Desraie. And I'm sure sometimes it's a fine line to conform, to keep, right? How do I say this? To be on the right path in regards to making sure that you can still do the things that need to are being asked for you, but at the same time not showing up in sweatpants, per se, right? Like going, there's a time for sweatpants and there's not. I mean, so do you think, you said, talking about the innocent gas being a woman and then expressing yourself and being yourself, if we continue to break stereotypes and break those boundaries, and with time, like I said, it would become more and more accepted, what would you say to an individual that is looking at that, right? Going, hey, how do I be myself? But how do I advance in my career? How do you balance that?
I unfortunately can't tell anyone else how to be their self. Sure. But I'll give at least the high level things of or at least what, I don't know, because being yourself can also be yourself differently. I always tell people to how do you I personally think one of the best ways to be successful in a career, and I like to think this is everywhere, but I don't think it goes all the way. But as far as I know, building a network around you of people who support you, I think is one of the more powerful things that anyone can do. I got into even before I got into the channel, it has been pretty much my entire career I wouldn't even say career, my entire job, life almost has been based on me having relationships, and then those relationships leading to someone being like, hey, there's a job here, or me being like, hey, where are you working? I want to work with you. What can I do to get that job? Or are you hiring? Or something along those lines. So building the network around you, how to build that network, everyone's different. So it depends on who you are. Me, I've always just been I'm like the person who goes up to people and be like, hey, you want to be my friend? What are you doing? Do you want to do something together? Or online in my neighborhood community, does anyone want to go for a walk with me and hang out? Because I'm bored and I need someone to hang out with. I'm going to drive Trevor crazy. That's my other half. But I think that finding your authentic self to everyone can be different. But to me, it's always been about doing the things that make me happy and that make me feel comfortable in who I am. And I can stand up and say, okay, I did that. That's who I am. Mm-hmm. And because I've always pretty much I've gotten a lot of positive feedback, especially in the channel from people around me. So as soon as the words stop being, you can't do that, and being like, yeah, you can, I just chose to believe the people around me who are speaking to me. And then I focused a lot on building relationships and network within the channel around me by being who I am, which is like pretty upfront and honest. And I like to ask people, well, is there anything I can do to support you? Is there any way I can help you? And I'm pretty honest and straight with that. And so because of all of that, I've been able to grow my career. There's been right now I'm working at Estendio, our compliance management platform. I work with Paul Redding and Ken Verone. And Paul Redding and I have been longtime friends in the channel, attended many conferences and had many late conversations about sales and like the channel. Actually, I wouldn't even say about sales, more about the channel, because it's all about relationships and the people you know and all these fun things. And so if I hadn't done that, it was literally a text messaging conversation when I found out that Paul was looking for someone to join him at Estendio. And so I sent him a text and said, A, I didn't even know you left and you joined Estendio, and B, you're looking for staff. Do you know that I'm looking? And then he pretty much was like, I didn't know you were looking. Let me send you a contract. So I feel like I've answered this question, but like went around in a different way because it's kind of a difficult question. How do you do it? Everyone's different and everyone's unique. But I think finding a way that you fit. So some people fit in Reddit, and some people fit on social, and some people fit on Facebook, and some people fit on real life. Mm-hmm. Some people might not be able to get out in real life, but then maybe there's your community networking groups, or maybe there's in your industry. Like I know in Calgary, there's a bunch of technical things, not as much as other cities because we're oil and gas, but it's growing. And so if I was in Calgary wanting to grow my brand or my potential here, that's where I would be. For me, because I'm more in the channel and there's not a lot of channel companies in Calgary.
Sure.
I focus a lot on LinkedIn and on vendors and building relationships and making sure that my social media, I'm interacting with people and engaging with people. So it kind of comes more natural, but that's also part of just who I am as a person, that I kind of only do what feels natural. And then that's why sometimes anyone who follows me on social, I'll like post a lot and then just get bored and overwhelmed and be like, no posts, can't do it anymore. I hope I answered that all right.
No, there's no right or wrong answer to any of that, right? It's you. And I appreciate you answering it at all. You talked about being laid off right before going on a vacation. How did you approach that from the standpoint of coping with being laid off? You find yourself going, oh shit, right here I am going on a vacation, right? And now I'm laid off. I mean, I know personally, I'd be like, it would be hard for me to, I'm trying to process this, but now I'm going to go on vacation. Now I got a lot of other concerns, right? Because how did you cope?
It was really different. It was a lot more difficult than I thought. So I actually had a mental health conversation on a panel at Channel Con at the August of 2023. So I got laid off at the end of June, and I knew I was going to have to pay for the go to this trip. Yay, but that's okay because I have a job. No job. Never mind. Okay, I'll pay for this trip. But anyways, I'm going to Channel Con. I'm having a mental health conversation. When I the mental health conversation to me is pretty powerful, pretty important. There's a lot of value in it, I think. But anyways, so when I got laid off, we're having another panel at CompTIA's ChannelCon on this conversation as well next month. So I just like to point that out as well, because I think it's going to be another powerful one. But anyways, so when I got laid off, the very first thing I actually did is put my glass half. I'm like a way too positive person. I can drive people crazy. So like glass half full first. I'm like summer off 2023. It's going to be awesome. When was the last time you had a summer off as an adult?
That I never.
Never. Right? I'm like, this will be fine. We had some money in savings. My other half is working. So Trevor's working. I'm like, it's okay. We can live off of Trevor for a couple of months. I'll take the summer off and then I'll get a job right away. Easy peasy. Everything will be fine.
Yeah.
And it was really difficult, even when I was in my super positive. I did a list about house chores that we were going to do. I organized the cupboards in the house that hadn't been organized. I unpacked boxes that had been pretty much packed since we had met when we first moved in together 10 years ago. And then the crash started happening. And the crash of I can't just I love working. And I know that people will be like, no one loves working. I'm like, me? I have my dream job. I work in the channel where I get to travel. I get to talk to MSPs. I get to make new friends all the time. I live in a place where I am consistently getting thrown out of my own bubble and having conversations that I've never had before. And I've never had those thoughts before. So my world is always getting bigger and shifting and changing. I'm learning about something new. And now I'm stuck at home for 2 months. Many people who know me know that COVID was really difficult for me because I was stuck in Canada for 18 months, which is the longest I've ever been in one place in my adult life. I spent the whole winter in Canada, which is the first time I've ever spent the whole winter in Canada. And I don't know if you know this, but it gets minus 40 and minus 50. And we meet in Celsius and Fahrenheit at minus 40. So you imagine how cold it is.
Yes.
Anyways, so things were starting to get a little uncomfortable because I didn't have enough project work. I couldn't self-motivate myself because I was not in the most best mental health place. There was good times because it's summer and I get to go outside. I can't spend money. I have project work with Kathleen, a podcast. I was working with a couple of other vendors, trying to help them with their go-to-market strategy, having a lot of good conversations. I was doing a lot of amazing interviews. Those people who interviewed me, thankful, but they weren't roles that I wanted. And this is another part. One of the biggest things that I was trying to mentally prepare or think about was do I accept a role for a job I don't want? Or do I wait out for the role that I want? And we kind of assumed 2023 that the role that I wanted was going to come out, was going to happen, this business development role. I worked at Datto, that kind of role on a team. And I was interviewing for these really cool roles, but they were all, I felt, a step up for me, that even though I knew I could do the job, I just wasn't sure if I was prepared to do the job. And so I decided I wanted to make a lateral move instead of a step up, which then changes the roles that you're applying for and all of these things and these conversations. People are approaching me. Many of my coaches were like, Des, you should do a step up. And I'm like, no, I'm going to do a lateral move. I want more time in this role. I need to learn more. I call work paid education a lot. So I'm like, I want to learn from my peers and my team before I ever have to coach and lead a team. I think that's just the way I wanted to go. And then September hit and it's funny because I laugh and then it's awkward. My youngest sibling passed away and I spent 2 months on the couch. So I was actually kind of relieved that I didn't have a job at the time and didn't have anyone relying on me because I was not in a good spot whatsoever. That was okay. And things got better. It was funny because anyone who's listening to this, I'm a very awkward person. There's so yes, I don't mean that's funny, but it's just awkward.
You and me both. I'm awkward as well. Yeah, so hey, we're good.
Anyways, I did an event, the actual in Banff, about mid-September, a couple weeks after Ashley had passed away. And I look back now and I can't remember the entire event. I didn't realize how bad my headspace was until looking back and realizing like I was just not, I pretty much lived on the couch for 2 months. So then you fast forward to like October and you're like, okay. So now I had summer off 2023, this amazing thing that was going to be amazing. And the jobs weren't there. And then I had the 2 months of the couch. That's completely fine. And I'm still having conversations, but the jobs are like, oh, we're budgeting in October. The headcount's going to come up. We're budgeting in December. No, January, Q1, we're getting headcount. There are several different companies that were expecting headcount in Q1 of this year. So by end of October, November, I might as well wait for Q1 because I'm waiting for budgets. Because I'm waiting for a job. And then that didn't happen. So by Q1, the jobs that I was hoping for weren't getting headcount. They weren't getting budgets. And now all of a sudden, my entire plan from June onwards has been like, I've done my steps. I've done the things I have done. I've applied for jobs. I've had the conversations. I've made what I think are educated decisions on the reasons why I'm not taking a role because the channel is small. You don't burn people and everything's falling apart. So it wasn't good necessarily, but I still stayed positive. So to answer the long-winded question, going through the layoffs, there were several parts of it that were very interesting. The ups and downs were crazy. And I think the best thing that I did to get myself through it is I made sure to lean on the community around me, whether it be actually, I probably talked to more, like I've got my friends, of course. I probably talked to more of my vendor friends, like these relationships of this community around you that know you professionally, know you personally, and they know the struggle that you're going through, and had those conversations and gone through being like, okay, for a job, I've done this and I've done this and I've done this. Is there anything else I'm forgetting? And they'd be like, you should do this. Or have you talked to this person? Des, did you remember to talk to this person? And those were the ways that I was able to keep the momentum going and keep, even when I was like, not necessarily in the best mental health spot, but I was in a spot where I'm like, I just want to work and I want to find a job that fits me. And I don't want to burn anyone in the community by accepting a job that won't. And really, really, really luckily, eventually it happened with Ascendio. And I'm so excited to be here. The team is phenomenal. I show up in meetings now where we have like 3 or 4 people in a meeting. And every time I'm like, no, I disagree with that. These are the reasons why. We have a conversation about it and we change and shift things because everyone puts in their mind and we're not the smartest person in the room and we work as a team. So I'm really, really glad that I waited. I'm really glad I did all those things. I'm lucky that it turned out the way it did because I could still be, by any means, I could still be jobless and I could still be, I got fractional work in the meantime, like my bills were paid, but it was just a matter of, I wanted a full-time job doing the things that I love to do, and finding that took a little bit longer than I thought it was going to, and I was a little bit nervous.
Sure. Well, at first, it left me a little speechless here. I'm so sorry for the loss of your sibling. I know losing loved ones is difficult to process, and we all process differently. I like hearing the success out of that, that you got through that. And yes, you could look back and you identify the time period when you were coping and when you were dealing with that loss and how you got through it. And you had a support system in place, whether it was locally with local friends or once again, in the channel with peers and relationships you've established over the years. But as far, when we look at, you were looking for that right fit, right? That right fit for you, and you weren't willing to accept anything other than that. What makes you the right fit for that role? What is it about you? What strengths do you have that makes you that person for that role? Help me understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Ascendio, we're going to talk about Ascendio first and then backtrack and why I'm right for the role. Even before I knew it. So Ascendio is a 11-year-old compliance platform that was built by CISOs for CISOs. So you're looking at a bunch of CISOs. I used to spend a lot of time talking with Ryan Weeks. I love that guy. I don't know if you know him, but definitely recommend anything security related, follow Ryan Weeks. Half the words he says, I don't understand because he's a billion times smarter than me. And those are CISOs. Those are the security guys. I don't understand it, but I love it. It's phenomenal. But so imagine a bunch of CISOs just geeking out on security and building a security platform that helps with compliance. So it's not a compliance platform, it's a security platform that will help you become compliant, because if you have security, it falls in line. And then they were selling on the enterprise level with different CISOs, so a very high-end product. And then our CEO came on board about 3 months ago, bought the company, flipped the entire model on the side, and said, the first thing I have to do, how do you take an enterprise product and bring it to channel? Well, community. Community is all of it and a big part of it. And then your pricing and your partnerships and your relationships with a vendor. When it comes to MSPs, those are also incredibly important. So first thing he did was hire Paul Redding. Paul Redding is incredibly well known in the community, especially when it comes into compliance. So, and Paul's plan was to first build out the community, build out the Reddit, build out the how MSPs have the relationship with Estendio, and then build out the marketing go-to-markets plan, which is also a lot of fun. And then we got to throw the entire business model on its side. So they decided first to do, now we offer any managed service provider a free partnership for a year. That gives them their own not-for-resale license and then gives them the tools to help use risk assessments for the prospects and their clients. So that's Estendio kind of with minimal, but like your booth pitch, essentially.
Yeah, sure.
But when I look at that, and when I had a conversation with Paul said, community, community, community. And then when I called Paul or texted him, the reason why he was so excited about me, and I shouldn't put words in his mouth, but I'm fairly certain he would say the same thing, is because of my community skills, my community growing skills, and the amount of effort and work that I put into growing community professionally and personally within the channel since my very first interview. Dan Wensley said to me, and I've said this on a million podcasts and a million times, and I'll always give him credit for this, in my interview that I did not take seriously and I wasn't going to take the job and I just went in because it would just be fun. My first time working I didn't even know what the channel was. I didn't understand any of it. I'm not a technology person. I up to that day, I don't even think I owned a computer at the time. That's like that person.
Channel. My radio has channels. So does my TV. What?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, what? Anyways, Dan Wensley said to me in that interview, he said that the industry is really small and there's only a handful of people you need to know to help guarantee yourself a job moving forward. That thing is the same when it comes to the MSPs, the vendors, the people. It's all about the people. And I've focused on the entire industry on building relationships. And so if you and I were ever to walk into a room at a conference, people stop me all the time. And if they don't stop me because I'm the most popular person in the room. Not even. It's I don't even know. Jay McBain coined it as the Rob Ray effect. And the first time I ever noticed anything like this, it's not from building a relationship. You go to an event and it's one person. It's you go to an event and you meet, say, at a conference, at a booth time, a regular event, say I'll meet 2,000 people. We'll break it down 500 people. So we meet 500 people, you talk to 500 people. You might have like a 5-second conversation with all of those. Maybe only half of them will ever remember you. So you're knocking it down to 250. And then at the lobby bar of those people, maybe you talk to 50 more people over the span of 4 days. And then 3 of those people you've talked to before, or 5 or whatever, and you now talk to them again, but this time you have a 30-minute conversation instead of a 5-minute conversation, and you reference the last conversation, so your relationship is built a little bit further. And then you do that every week continuously, not every week, but often at every conference for 5 years, 10 years. But you scale that because each person that you built a stronger relationship with, you have another story that happens at the next conference if you see them. Or you see someone who, I didn't see you, but so-and-so was telling me that they met you at the last event and then I should hang out with you and chat. And I'm like, of course, I'll buy you a drink. Let's have a drink. Or what do you do? Or me, I'm like the most random conversations or like interesting facts, things I blurt out random things, and you start building these relationships with people. They remember you because you blurted out a whale fact. There's some interesting whale fact that I'm like, did you know this about whales? And they're like, no, Des, I didn't know this about whales. Like, what are you doing? But then they remember me. And I think that community building skill was something that it was probably pretty natural to me. It's just who I am as a person. Mm-hmm. But then because of the coaching and the mentors that I've had, that since I got into this industry, they pushed that relationship building. Dan would always be like, Des, yes, you have to go for breakfast. I hate going for breakfast. And yes, you have to talk to people. I hate having to talk to people at breakfast. Like I'm like, hi. No, it's breakfast. Leave me alone. But those are those things because it's about, yes, Des, you have to stay at the lobby bar and your goal is to talk to 3 people that you've never talked to before. Your goal is to do this. That community relationship building, I think, is absolutely everything. And probably the biggest reason that Paul Redding and Ken Verone were interested in bringing me on board or excited about bringing me on board. We were at an event, Beyond event, and it was the first time I ever met Ken in real life. And I walked through the event with him, and we had several MSPs stop and be like, oh my God, you brought Des on board. That is really cool. That's very exciting. I'm excited to see what you guys have and are doing. Besides that, I hope that it's my personality and my ability to sell because I do love selling. And I think that I do a good job. Really, all I'm trying to do is get people to take 30 minutes of their day to review our solution and give us feedback. It's a free partnership. So I think that there's enough value in it myself. Like on a side note, going back to Ryan Weeks, I remember when the big attack happened and it was, I think it was Huntress, so Kyle, Ryan Weeks, and somebody, no, not Huntress. I just said Kyle and Huntress that's the wrong company. So I'll apologize ahead of time. That's okay. Okay. But Kyle, no. So Ryan Weeks and a bunch of other vendors, they did the risk assessment checklist after the attacks in Kaseya had happened way back in the day. Mm-hmm. And I used to go to conferences and go to peer groups and say, this risk assessment will really, really help you. And people were really excited about it, but they didn't know what to do the next steps. So I think that there's a lot of power in having a tool that not only can help you assess risks, point out security, but then have a team behind you that can help you walk through those steps and understand how sometimes it's not talking about compliance. That's the conversation to have with your clients. Mm-hmm. It's more about security, and even like talking to vendor or to different MSPs on the floor. They're like, well, we don't have to deal with compliance. It doesn't matter. I'm like, but do you have like a baseline security within your own business that you're saying to a client, hey, you know what? I don't want to buy this risk. I don't want you to be my client because the risk that you're willing to buy is not the risk I'm willing to buy. So using a system like ours can literally, those risk assessments, you can be like, okay, this is the baseline risk that I'm willing to work with you. But this is why, and walk you through those steps with any prospect and clients. I think there's a lot of value. At least, I don't know, when I listened to Ryan Weeks so many years ago, that's what I thought. And so I'm pretty excited to see what's going to happen over the next few months here at Ascendio.
Yeah. No, I'm excited to hear more about it moving forward, right? And a better understanding of what the offering is and what that looks like, to through the channel. So that's where you're at today. I know when I first met you at a conference. I think that was in Arizona, and you came to one of our peer group meetings.
The big.
Probably leading up to the big. Yep, correct. And I know you came into our group, and I'm like, who is this person, right? Like it was you had it cranked up, and you were full of energy, and it left obviously a huge impression on me. And there was no forgetting who you were, who Desraie is. So let's talk about, obviously you're working for a different organization at that time. And you mentioned Colin and with Passportal in the past. And actually Colin recorded an episode with me just last week of the podcast here. So, and we go back before that, what were you, since you talk about the channel and the relationships, customer relationships and business development, did you see yourself, you talked about oil and gas and not being for you, but did you really believe that you'd find yourself in a customer relations / business development type role that you are today or have been with these past organizations most recently? Is that something that you inspired to pursue, or is it just found yourself in that situation?
I fell into it, but I definitely was inspired to pursue it before I knew it existed.
Okay.
I had wanted this job probably, I wouldn't say since I was probably about 21. I'm going to say, so since my very first restaurant job, okay, I wanted this job. I just didn't know it existed and I didn't know what it was. But I tell people this all the time. The business development role is a role that is in, I don't know, I'm not going to say all, but in almost all industries. And the role is the same. It's the product or the industry that you're working in that can change, but really the role. And I coach people all this time. I'm like, I fell into business development, but I fell into it from sales and then business development kind of be the next step. But to kind of go backtrack on like what I mean by that role exists in every industry, starting at restaurants. So you work in a restaurant and you have, say, your food delivery person who maybe you got the food delivery person that you normally order from. And then there's this other company that's kind of coming in and they want you to buy their steaks. So they come in and they deliver a bunch of steaks. Maybe they take you out for dinner at another restaurant that serves their steaks to show you how amazing they're doing and selling those steaks. Or you have like your beer rep. So say, have you ever gone to like a Bud or what is Bud American? Yeah, Bud's American as well?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you have like your Bud business development rep who would come in and be like, oh, we have this new beer that we want you guys to sell. Why don't you guys come to our party and we're going to sell and we're going to do this. And that was, so I knew that role existed when I was working and serving and bartending. And at first I wanted to be the beer rep, but then I also was like, I don't need to drink that much more. And I'm kind of useless after like a certain period of time, like 11 PM. Like I can do the lobby bar, but it takes like 11 PM is kind of my cutoff. I'm like, I'm going to bed. So I didn't really want to live that like scene. And then fast forward through a couple of industries, I've watched that same role and same thing happen. I ended up falling into travel and I worked as a travel agent for a few years. And in the travel agent, you'd have the business development role of the tour companies or WestJet, or the airlines. But the tour companies were the ones I really liked. And then the vacation packages were the ones, of course. So say we'd have like WestJet vacations. Their rep would come in and be like, if you sell this many packages, these are they tell us about this hotel and this hotel and this hotel. And you would get like a $500 budget that you could go on a working fan. So they would bring you down to a resort in Mexico and you would do tours of hotels all day and they're fine dining you and it's amazing. Uh-huh. Or in the tour company. So there's this company called On the Go Tours. I went to Egypt with them. Absolutely amazing. Goodness. And Miles Walker, who also works in the industry now, was our rep at On the Go Tours. So he took us to Egypt and we did 10 days. It was absolutely amazing. A great tour. Of course, they're like doing all these really, really cool things. And so I looked at Miles Walker and I was like, I want your job, but we're in travel. And when originally I started applying for the role, when I got the interview at Passportal and I wasn't taking it seriously, I turned down jobs in travel in the role that I wanted, the business development role, because the wage that they pay was really, really low because it's heavily involved in, well, you're going to be traveling to Egypt and insert wherever 3 times, like you're going to be traveling 6 times on these amazing trips. You're going to love the job. But the age range that I kind of aged out is that financial was more important than that. So I couldn't accept the role. So then all of a sudden I got introduced to the channel and this role that exists that I had dreams about and I loved. And it's all about relationship building. It's all about traveling to different conferences. I also have a passion for conferences. That's a kind of another story. I've heard conferences around the world in many different industries. They blow my mind. They're just so interesting and there's just so much to attending, working, and doing good execution at a conference. Mm-hmm. So I was like working conferences, going out for dinner, taking people out, getting to see cool things, getting to see amazing speakers. This is a phenomenal job. And the industry itself pays a lot more than travel. Okay. So, maybe I found my industry and then actually this is why I talk about Miles Walker. And then I was like, Miles, you should come work over here. And got him to move over here too. And I have to say, like, I love the business development role so much. I love sales. I love closing. I love sales. Like, to me, sales, like I talk about closing. I got on a call yesterday and like I said, I'm doing follow-up cold calls, not really cold because they're listing from the people who attended the event and they scanned your booth badge. So people have scanned. So people I've scanned and said like, you're scanned, you're going to get a call back. And this gentleman I called yesterday was like, I don't want to talk to you. I was like, okay, cool. Like about to hang up. And he's like, no, I just want to tell you that I've received too many phone calls and emails from you guys. It's the follow-up from the event. And he said, since the event, all of you vendors are just calling me all the time and just trying to like sell me. And I don't have time for this. And I'm like, I absolutely understand. I 100% understand. It sucks, but it's also our jobs. You like going to a conference means that's what's going to happen. Anyone who's listening, if you don't want that to happen, you create a vendor email for the event. You register that way, and then you get your follow-ups to that vendor email. But that's neither here or there. So I call the guy and he's telling me about how upset he is about vendors reaching out. But then he holds me on the phone for 15 minutes because he's interested in the product. Now, if I hadn't emailed him and hadn't called him, he never would have remembered to reach out to us to tell us that he was interested in the product because he's busy. Because like you just said, he's way too busy to talk to vendors. He's way too busy. So it's like a catch-22. We have to do that. And I love doing it. I can mentally get over the fact that they don't want to talk to me. But I also know that based on the information that I have of the compliance solutions in the industry, what we are doing is beneficial and helpful. And if it means that if I pick up the phone and call and find value to an MSP that can help them sell more, Ken Verone brought the company that he worked for on mainly using compliance and then other things, of course, from like 0, like 3 employees to like 100 million plus in 18 months. That's a conversation worth having. And so I like get through it, but definitely the calling is not my favorite. I like the business development side.
Well, and let's talk about that for a second. So touch on that because I know that for me and historically who Mark Thomas is, picking up that phone and making that call is definitely something that doesn't excite me, right? Whether that's a fear of rejection or whatever, who knows, whatever is embedded in there somewhere, right? But obviously you said you do it because, hey, you're reaching out because you know how it could help someone, right? Doesn't necessarily make it easy when hey, I'm too busy, don't want to talk to you. I mean, it doesn't make it easy, but when you do get success from that person that does take the call, that person is genuinely interested in you, get them onboarded and knowing they're going to benefit from this, I'm sure that's well worth it. But it said, how do you always get over that mental aspect or get pushed through to say, hey, I'm doing this thing because it's going to help them. You know what I mean? I guess to especially, talk to me as an individual that just despises picking up that phone and making that random call, right? Like going, now it's different. You call me, right? If you call me, email me, and you want to talk about your services and our offerings, that's much easier, right?
Of course.
So like, you called me, yeah, I'll talk to you all day long, right? And like, it's like I've known you my entire life. But it's just that cold aspect is obviously very challenging for me. So talk to someone like myself and maybe someone in our audience as well, a listener that I guess coach me through that. Coach me through how you mentally prepare yourself for that and how you get yourself through that.
So I said Eric Torres many times in this, but I'll say it again. Eric Torres is one of the biggest believers in cold calling. And he worked for an MSP first before coming to Datto. So he's got the MSP experience. And he smashed it in my head because we would do a lot of coaching with MSPs for sales. We're a big part of the marketing development funds initiative when it at Datto. So we'd have a lot of these sales conversations because like MSPs struggle selling. That's one of those things. So some of the tips and tricks are going to come from him. And then I'll also talk like just thought process.
Yeah.
For me, the thought process, one, respect when you can't do it and just get over it. Just be like, I just step away. Like there's times where I will dial the number and it'll start ringing and I hang up. I'm like, no, I just can't. And if I do that like to 2 different people or 3 different people where I like don't even like get through, I'm like, I need a break. Like I need to step away. Like clearly, like if someone picks up the phone and I just am like instantly thinking like, no, don't wanna. I'm like, okay, take a breather.
Are you just not in the right headspace at that time? I mean, the right mood, or is there other thing influencing? What's influencing you at that point to say, I just can't do this right now?
It's because it's, and I'm not going to say the fear of rejection, but it's the idea of, okay, so I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to have to leave. I think it's something along the lines like out of every 100 calls, you get like 3 connections. So I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to sit here and I'm going to dial for hours and leave voicemails and be like, I always believe in smiling through every call. I think it's a powerful thing to do. So I'm going to be smiling through every call. And that's a lot of energy to be smiling through 98 calls that are going to voicemails that people aren't listening to, that you still have to because maybe 10 of them listened to them and maybe 3 of them called you back, but that's the purpose. And we all know the touch points that it takes. So, you have to make the call. And so for me, one is respecting when you can't, but when you can, like doing the tips or tools when you can, or like setting yourself up for success. I have huge amounts of calls to get through. I'm going to be on the phone pretty much today for the rest of the day. But say like for you, it's a little bit different. And for people who are listening, they're probably not in this kind of role where they're only trying to get chunks. First, always set your calendar up for blocks of time. This is going to this is what you're doing during this block of time. I like to say, just get it done. I'm not necessarily the person who does a lot of research. There's a lot of arguments and discussions in the cold calling world saying, if you don't do, like if you use generic, it doesn't work. Part of it for me is I'm kind of lucky because everything kind of gets like, I get like huge lists and they're attending a conference. So I generally know they're going to be interested. They scanned and they're not interested, they're going to let me know. But they either scan for swag or they scan because they're interested. But when I look at, if I was to think about it from an MSP perspective and you're trying to call a bunch of SMBs, whoever you're in, I would almost set it up in different bundles because the easiest way to get through all your calls is you have them all in a bundle. So making time to get the leads, clean the leads, do the research so you have that information. So because if I was taking a lead list from an event, I already know they're all clean. I already know what they're generally looking for. And they generally will probably have forgotten, but they're an MSP. They're in the industry. So I don't have to clean being like, it's a mom and dad pop shop. I would never work for them. However that is, who you need to talk to. I would then, this one might be a little bit different than you, like for the MSP, but I still think it would be connect with people on LinkedIn. And then from there, when you're doing your sit down, that's when I would just like, how many calls? I would almost start from the get-go and say, set yourself up for the month. And then if you're doing calls, say once a week, you have like 200 leads that you clean up right away for the first of the month. And then say every week, if you're going to do 25 calls in an hour, 50, like however many you're planning to, set yourself up blocks. So you spend one day cleaning up all of the leads that you're coming in and the rest of the week kind of going through them and adding in. I'm not the queen of cold calling. So there's like I said, Eric Torres, king of cold calling. I am not. But for me, the way I find that the biggest things that I think for being most successful is I do that. I have my leads that are clean, and then I have my lists. And when I know I'm cold calling, I sit down and I call. If I was doing things on a short window, I would set myself up for a 10-minute, we're doing 10 calls before we take a 5-minute break. 10 calls before we take a 5-minute break. I don't have that and also the ADHD focus is the hyper focus. If I don't move, I get coffee dropped off and sandwiches or else I won't eat or move for hours on end, as you can imagine, which maybe makes me good at it. But like, if you're not that type of person, like I find that scheduling blocks, and even if you hate cold calling to the extreme, then schedule 20-minute blocks, do it 3 times a day and say, in this 20-minute block, I'm going to do 10 calls, 20-minute block, do 10 calls. And then at the end of the day, you spent enough time, but you've just done 30 calls a day. And if you were to continue to do that in your business, I feel like you'll get into the habit, it'll feel better. Your messaging is another thing. And then always leaning on someone or doing the research to make sure that your messaging is clean, concise, and has value to the person who is answering the phone. What are they looking for, and how can your business help them? Did you ask them what they're looking for? Do they have an IT service provider? Those kind of questions. It's normal sales stuff, but I understand that they're not normal. I don't think we should have a big sales conversation in here. I think that there's people who are smarter than me when it comes to explaining stuff like that.
Yeah, no worries.
But But I think the biggest things that, like I said, that I do, keep a smile on your face whenever you're calling, from the moment you start dialing to the moment people pick up the phone, even if you're leaving a voicemail, smile the entire time. I like to leave voicemails that I think if people listen to them, they will smile. Because the voice I hope you're having an amazing day. I'm like, this is Desraie from Astendio. We are the most amazing compliance management platform that you need to know about now. I know you can't see what I'm doing, but you know what? It's fantastic. We are so excited to chat. Call me back. Bye.
Oh my goodness. I mean,
can you imagine if you listen to your small to medium smile, business, right? And get that? Yeah, exactly. You'd be like, what? That's fantastic. This is great. This person is having so much fun. And meanwhile, I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. But it makes it more enjoyable. I have a little bit more fun. And when I can't do that, I respect it. Just respect it. Take a step back. But yeah, I think that and then the last thing I would say, this is like an old school thought, that I was working in Australia. I was working in Australia doing really cold sales. You ever had the people that do the Dead Sea on your hand? Pretty much that in Australia,
really?
At a mall where someone comes up to you and smell this, and then they're going to drag you in. I was doing makeup sales of all things, the backpacker jobs. And the people that I was working for, I learned the most about sales from them. And it's hardcore sales. So it's different, hard sales, you're closing. But one of the things that they said to me was that if they're not going to give you their money, they're going to give it to somebody else. So do you believe your money or time, what I'm trying to do when I talk about Astendio is I'm trying to buy 30 minutes of your time to review the solution. Can I give you enough value in this conversation, in that conversation, that you think that you want to take a look? If that's all you're doing when you're talking to your end user is saying, I have enough value. Can I have enough of your time to show you my value? Are you interested in a further conversation? But the other, in my head, I'm like, if I do not say that to them, someone else is going to say it, and they might not have good enough product. They might not have the same value. They might not have the same, but they have a salesperson that's better than me in having that conversation to convince the person that 30 minutes of their time is better spent with them than with me. Do I think that's right? No. Do you, as an MSP, want to not make that call and have another person who has a crappier product, or maybe isn't you, or your family? You're supporting your family, yourself.
Yeah.
Do you want the money in your pocket, or do you want it in somebody else's? When I get that in my head, I'm I know first, Astendio is a good product, or I wouldn't be working here.
Yeah.
So do I believe that I can help them? Yes. Do I believe that that conversation is going to be valuable? Yeah, not 100%, but knowing about the different options, I think in education is valuable.
Mm-hmm.
But do I believe that if they have 30 minutes of time, they should be spending it with us versus somebody else? Depending on what they're looking at, I'm going to hope so. And if it's something that they should be looking at, well, then I hope that they make that decision. But I think as a salesperson, I can see that all I want is hopefully to help you out. And if that's worth enough of a conversation, let's have a conversation. If not, then that's cool. I'm going to move on and try to call someone else.
Yeah, no, great. And once again, whether it's an MSP or any type of business, really it goes back to going, these are still challenges that as people, a lot of us struggle with, right? And it could be nothing more than we struggle having that conversation that you seem very natural with when it comes to meeting strangers or different people in the industry events, right? That, hey, that you're introducing yourself and having a conversation and knowing that, hey, whether it goes anywhere or not, that's okay. You brought value to the day. You brought a smile to their face. And, listen, I just want to kind of curious how you manage that and how it impacts you. And no, he said, if you're not feeling it, okay, we're going to take a break and come back to this. And kind of how you push through. So I appreciate your insight.
You brought up an amazing point there, though, that is like a thought process that has to be also like processed and thought about. And I am entirely a different personality type than many, many, many people. I'm an incredible extrovert. I'm fairly weird. I'm awkward. But my personality is this way. There's a lot of people who the skill set that I have doesn't come naturally to them. And so I do find that it's about finding how you interact with people and how you work, and then finding those people who also do the same thing. I have to shift how I interact with people based on them, or else I can be incredibly aggressive and I can make people uncomfortable. You put me with an introvert, I'm smashing with them. Like they're like, just leave me alone and don't talk to me. So you have to shift and adjust, and even yourself shift and adjust. So even when we were talking earlier about branding and stuff, you might not be the person that ever does cold calling, and you might be a managed service provider and you have to grow your business. So then you might have to think about outside the box. Well, what else can you do? Is it where are your clients and where are the people that you want to work with? Then maybe that's where you're on Reddit and you're trying to find business there. Maybe you're hiring an off-site marketing person to push more marketing. Or maybe you're looking at your client base and saying, I don't want to do the effort of cold calling. I'm going to look at my current client base and see how much I can get them to grow, and use them for referrals. But however you work with the world, and however, a lot of managed service providers aren't salespeople. And it's a huge thing in this industry. I know Ken talked about it in the last panel. Yeah. It's a huge differentiator between us vendors, because we're hired because we're salespeople. Like the CEO of my company didn't necessarily decide to be an MSP and then a CEO of the company and be like, I'm going to sell the product because he's the best salesperson. No, he decided to buy a company because he's a great CEO and he's really good at understanding products and what the MSPs need. He knew that he had to hire a salesperson who's good at sales. And I know that a lot of managed service providers aren't to the point where they can hire someone, and I don't necessarily have the complete answer. There's a lot of Jennifer Bleems out there, Robin Robbins. There's many other companies that help with sales and marketing. But if it was just you trying to find out, if you're not good at cold calling, either you can get coaching on it, or maybe it's not the way you're supposed to go. Maybe it's supposed to be going to a networking event in person or a virtual one, or kind of figuring out, I think it's kind of important to figure out how you interact with the world. And also yes, get outside your bubble, and there's things that you can do. And if you really want to go that way, there's coaching you can take, there's mentors. If you need help from me, reach out to me at any point in time. If there's someone out there, Eric Torres has sat down and talked to so many people about cold calling. I've watched him do presentations on it on stage. If you followed exactly what he said step by step, that's going to be pretty freaking helpful. But if you're doing this on your own, finding a way that you can also do it, because you don't want to do something that makes you miserable, even though you have to grow. I don't really know what the easy answer for that is, but recognizing the fact that people are different just because like, and I actually hate this. Like I hate cold calling. Like I get like a lot of the times will be like, but I love the company. I love the job. And so this is what I'm going to do. There's people that are professional cold callers who will do it for life. I am not one of those people. I will do it till the ends of a means and because I know it has value to the end users. And that's why when someone says F off, I'm like, cool, I'm good. You could have sent that to me in an email and I would have not called you in the first place. Totally happy with that. But I do think that there's enough value. So I don't feel like I talked around again in circles with that one.
No, that's okay. So you mentioned the word grow. So let's touch on that. So you mentioned the word grow. In your experience in the customer relations and business development, in the channel, out of the channel, Desraie, at this point in time, with your experience, what would you say in today's market? What are 2 things that you feel that businesses need to change to grow?
Right now, I think businesses have to take some time to listen to the vendors. And I don't necessarily say that just because of Ascendio. I say that because of how quickly the industry is shifting right now and how many new vendors are in the space that have tools that can speed up the processes, lower the cost of doing things. Like there's another company that I work fractionally with called Aportio, and they do AI email triage, and they can save 3 to 5 minutes per email, depending on where the arguments is. So it was put like, you're like, 3 to 5 minutes, like no big deal. At Beyond, Malcolm Gladwell spoke. And one of the things that he said at the event was that, what does 3 to 5 minutes look like? And his example was, if 3 to 5 minutes, if every doctor had an additional 3 to 5 minutes to talk to each patient, imagine how that patient care would go. Imagine how those patients would feel. Now, if you take it backwards and be like, okay, in an MSP world, if every one of your technicians spent 3 to 5 minutes extra with a client, whether it be them calling and saying, hey, I'm just doing a touch base or insert conversation. And they did that every time they saved 3 to 5 minutes, they literally spent it on working on clients or working on other projects. How would your business look? Without looking at other vendors now, and also I would say, I guess my 2 things are going to be peers and vendors. So make sure to look at the vendors because the vendors have so many new tools that are coming out and so many ways to save time and to speed up your processes, to change your processes, to make them more efficient, that it's important to stay in the loop of what's happening around us. Because if not, like when I started at Passportal, I remember calling vendors who were like, I don't do the cloud and I'll never do anything in the cloud. Can you imagine where that vendor is, that MSP is now? They're like, only cloud only. If you don't stay ahead of the curve, you're going to get left behind. So that's one. And then I would say peers, which is, once again, Ken said the same thing, which is cool. Peer relationships in this industry are everything. And the number of times I go to conferences and you watch a bunch of MSPs sit around a table and then the 2 MSPs are friends and they start talking and the other person's there and they are like, that was a question I never even thought to ask. I didn't even know I could fix that problem, let alone there was a better way to do it. Until you talk to your MSPs and talk to competitors, sure. I can't remember the word that Bob Kopech, it's co-competitors. Anyways, I love Bob. Bob's fantastic. But
cool dude. He's not too far from me.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, Bob's great. But the talking to your peers, whether it be in life, across the board, and then whether it be personally or professionally in your career, I think talking to community around you is one of the ways to get fastest from here to there. Because you don't necessarily know that there's a question, like you don't even know if you have a problem until someone points out that they have an easier way to do something. I'm notorious for that in my computer, my technology usage. I will use the longest ways to do things when there's a shortcut, because no one ever taught me the shortcut. And because my brain doesn't work as like, for everything I do, is there a shortcut? Is there a shortcut? And I'm just like, no, this is why I was taught to do it.
You're doing what you know.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just going to keep doing it. But then when I work in an office, or when Trevor, because we work next to each other, he'll be like, Des, why are you doing it that way? If you do this, I'm like, oh. So then I have little post-its of being like, use this next, use this. It's going to save me 30 seconds. It's going to save me this. But when business, especially in the MSP industry and the channel, there's so many, you're not on an island by yourself. There's so many other MSPs that are willing to network, willing to help. I was on two different conversations with the MSPs in the last little bit here. And they literally are saying the same thing. Like, just call me. Just call me if you need something. Like if you don't know how to do this, let me know, or let's just have a weekly setup conversation to figure out what are the main pain points of our business. What can we work together? My main pain point isn't your main pain point. Maybe it's a little bit different. I just think I would say that those two things are probably the most powerful things right now, because of the way AI is going. You have to look at the vendors, because the way technology is moving. You have to look at the vendors. Super important. And then security too, the way security is going, you have to look at the vendors. All of these things, you can't necessarily think of the problem to figure out the solution. You have to look at, see what are the problems, like what are the solutions being created, and do they solve any problems that you have? And then your peer networking, peer groups are amazing. Yes, they cost money, but the problem with things that are free is I find that a lot of the times people don't follow through. I do a lot of mentoring and coaching, and then you'll be like, people will just fall off, and you're like, no, I'm good. I don't, because they're not. So when you pay for it, people are more invested, which is always good. There's several groups you're part of, several of groups, peer groups, like they're amazing. But yeah, those would be my two answers.
Okay. And we touched on self-expression. We touched on being a woman and self-expressing. If you, and obviously at some point you shifted, obviously, industries and focus, what would you, I guess, if someone was out there and was considering making a career change, being a young female, what's that one bit of advice you would give her to, I guess, give her that thought to process, to think of, hey, yes, I can do this. This is you, right? You succeeded. You've made these things. You knew what you wanted. You held out for that thing, the right fit. What would you, I guess, suggest to that young female looking to make a change?
I would tell anyone first they can, because it is crazy the number of females who don't even know technology is an option. So usually I first point out, hey, did you know you can work in tech? And then usually the response back is, but I don't know anything about technology. And then I say, well, what is your skill set? And what do you want to do? And then technology, when I talk about working in technology, I use the airport as an example a lot of the times. You don't have to be a pilot to work at the airport. You don't have to be technical to work in technology. Technology is an industry. So in that industry, there's HR, there's marketing, there's sales, there's there's technology, but there's entire businesses that are ran. They have entire departments and people who work in those departments that have nothing to do with tech. But tech as an industry is growing quite quickly. So I think the opportunity for any women in tech, any person in tech across the board is amazing and phenomenal. So first thing I would do is tell people they have an opportunity to look into it and to figure out their skill set, and then look for jobs that match those skill set. And then I would tell people to interact and network with those people who have those jobs and the job and the career or businesses that you want. But that's a little bit further. So that would be the first thing. And then when I tell people that they're in it, once you get into it, I would tell them to connect with the people around them, build the networks, join the WIT groups, join the conversations around. Make sure that you are having conversations outside of your network about these opportunities, because we need it to grow. This isn't just a WIT conversation. It's not even just a diversity conversation. It's that, unfortunately, a lot of people don't understand that there is opportunity, aren't given the chance to grow into that opportunity or the education to grow into opportunity, don't have the network of the people who, like I said, I got the interview, or I shouldn't say I got the interview. The only reason I applied for the interview was because someone I knew had posted the job saying, hey, I just started this company and they're looking for someone. Is anyone interested? I wasn't looking for a job, so I never would have applied. I never would have ended up in technology. There was only Passwordle was the only technology company in Calgary that was in this industry that opened up the door for me. So there's a lot of things that just, if they hadn't happened, I never would have been here. So that's one of the reasons when I push growing your network, when I push having those conversations and building and reaching out to people, I do it because it is beneficial. I've done a lot of interviews with different podcasts and different people, and been a part of a lot of conversations. And a lot of the people I meet fell into the industry. They fell into tech.
No doubt.
Yeah. And so I would want every single person to know there's a place for them. It can be difficult. There can be other things, but the industry is shifting and changing. But there's kind of, especially when it comes to the MSP space, there's kind of I think the terminology would be like a stopgap, where people across the board, businesses across the board are having a staffing problem. Totally understand. I can see where the issue lies. Managed service providers have an issue hiring and retaining staff. They hire and train someone and then they go somewhere else because they can pay them more, so on and so forth. And then you have the problem where they're like, well, I can't hire diversity because no one's applying for diversity. So do I just hire diversity for diversity's sake, but they're not even qualified? I get that issue and I don't necessarily have an easy fix for it. But I think that if we backtrack it, and at least in our own communities are having a conversation, especially at the younger age, of telling people, what kind of job do I want to do when I grow up? Well, did you know you can work in technology at 8 and 10 and 15 and 20? And like, if we open the conversation and have it to more rooms, to more people, and give them that opportunity, and then connect them with your network. And when they're interested, introduce them to the person. If they're interested in doing marketing and technology, be like, or they're interested in marketing. You're not marketing technology, it's marketing. If you're interested in marketing, perfect. I know 3 people in marketing. Would you like, they said that they would open a chat with you. Would you like a quick conversation with them? I know 2 people, you're interested in sales. You're going to do oil and gas sales. You know what? I have another, or the lead-in sales job, I would say, is probably cell phone sales, one of them. You're going to do cell phone sales. Yeah. Go to those places who are doing cell phone sales and be like, hey, have you ever thought about working in technology? Or insert whatever. I think that having those conversations more often, earlier and younger, will kind of open the job market up. I don't know how to fix it. And I know that it's broken. I've had some random conversations recently where recognizing the fact that the diversity in the workforce conversation can be difficult because, well, why are we having a diversity in workforce conversation when people can't even get people to work for them in the first place? Right. But if we don't have the conversation, how do we fix it?
True. Very true. No, I know it's definitely a conversation that I haven't had enough of, right? To the younger generation. And I think a lot of times we think of that going, yes, there is more. It's not just tech, right? There's obviously a lot of other roles that surround, the deliverable.
There's huge, and as long as technology grows, these businesses will continue to grow. So it just makes sense. Like, I go back to oil and gas. If I was 18 years old now and looking for work, oil and gas would not be as nice as it was 20 years ago because the economy is in a very different spot than it was 20 years ago. Right. So what else am I going to do? And what sucks, especially for what I see in a lot of females, is they look at hairdresser, they look at massage therapist. And not that those are bad careers by any means, but you see an opportunity here where people are like, well, I don't want to be a hairdresser. What else can I be? Oh, I can be a flight attendant. Oh, I don't want to do that. And then like they don't even think about technology at all. Like it's not, or they think of marketing and they think of, oh, I'm going to do affiliate marketing. No, like there's other options.
Sure.
Yeah, like those are jobs and like those are things you could do. But if we're not having the conversation about this entire massive industry that needs people, and even for like managed service providers, like look at sales. Sales is people who do sales. They, especially professional salespeople, there's a lot of them, and they want to work and they want to make money. So what about like why like hiring a salesperson like that? I don't know. But yeah, it's an interesting thought process.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your thoughts on that. So Desraie, you talked a little about this podcast, the organization. Obviously, we'll put some notes in the description. But what is the best way for people to see hear or listen or see the podcast? I'm not sure what format you're in. And then how to reach out, how to connect. And we say networking and relationships are everything. Mm-hmm. How do people reach you?
So I'm pretty much available. It's Desraie on LinkedIn. You can spell my name Desraie. You'll find me on LinkedIn, Desraie Thomas. I think I'm the only one with that spelling, which is always fun and interesting. Astendio. I always like Astendio. And then our branding is already done and our marketing strategy is already done. But like, do you know what Astendio stands for?
No, I do not.
No? Okay. I like to think that it's Harry Potter for compliance. Astendio! So you go to astendio.com to learn about Astendio. Our podcast with Kathleen Martin and myself is the Channel CRO. You'll see it. It's on your Spotify. You'll see it everywhere. You can access that. However, if any chief revenue officers or really anyone who's really focused on those sales and those metrics, sales and marketing, you ever interested, we'd love to interview you. Please reach out to me that way. I'm also pretty active on Facebook because I just am. My Facebook, though, I will warn you, is more I don't block it for different people, so you will get more Des. I like to talk about mental health. I like to talk about real stuff. So we have a lot of those conversations. Sometimes I do things like where during COVID, I built an airplane out of a cardboard box. I also built a booth because I really miss booth time out of cardboard boxes, and I had a whole Marriott bar. One time I built a Marriott bar. So you'll see me doing random ADHD crafting / baking sourdough bread / I have an idea like painting this back wall as a sun because I miss the sun in the middle of winter.
Okay. No, that's awesome. That's awesome.
You'll find me doing that. You can reach out if there's any way I can be helpful. Please reach out. I love different projects. Love to be helpful. Love to any way that I can probably positively impact the world. I am on board.
Wonderful. Well, Desraie, I want to thank you. Thank you for taking the time for me, taking the time for our audience and listeners. It was wonderful getting to learn a little bit more about you and your career.
Thanks. Thank you
so
much for having me.
I look forward to our next interaction.
Yeah, I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you for having me. And yeah, I hope we can do something else together sometime.
All right, look forward to it.
All right,
thanks.
Cheers.